Picture this. Your protagonist and antagonist are locked in a battle of wits, trading verbal barbs dripping with subtext. The air crackles with tension as each line of dialogue ratchets up the stakes. Their words are like weapons, each one carefully chosen to cut deep and hit where it hurts. Makes you lean forward in your seat a bit, doesn't it? That's the power of conflict-driven dialogue. When done right, it can transform a simple conversation into a heart-pounding, white-knuckled roller coaster ride for your readers. And the best part? You don't need explosions or car chases or elaborately choreographed fight scenes to create that kind of edge of your seat tension. All you need is two characters with opposing goals, a dash of subtext, and a whole lot of simmering emotional stakes. In this video, we're going to dive into 4 essential techniques for using dialogue to introduce, escalate, and complicate conflicts between your characters. By the end, you'll have a whole toolbox of tricks for crafting conversations that not only advance your plot, but reveal the juiciest bits of your characters' personalities, relationships, and hidden agendas. So let's jump right in. First up, let's talk about how to introduce conflicts through subtext and implication. Because here's the thing. In real life, people rarely come right out and say exactly what they're thinking or feeling, especially when there's tension involved. We dance around the issue. We use coded language. We hint at our grievances through tone and body language. As writers, we can harness that same power of subtext to suggest conflicts in our dialogue without spelling them out directly. It's all about finding the underlying meaning beneath the words, the unspoken fears, resentments, and power struggles simmering just below the surface. For example, let's say you have a married couple who are supposed to be celebrating their anniversary, but there's been some unspoken tension brewing for a while. The wife has slaved away all day to cook a special dinner, but when she asks her husband how it tastes, he just shrugs and says, "It's fine." Now, on the surface, "it's fine" might seem like a neutral response. But if you describe the husband's clipper tone, the way he doesn't quite meet his wife's eyes, suddenly that simple phrase becomes loaded with subtext. It suggests that there's something else bothering him, something he doesn't want to discuss directly. As the wife presses him, maybe he starts making passive-aggressive comments about how she's always nagging him, or how he's too tired from work to appreciate her efforts. He never comes right out and says, "I'm resentful of how much time you spend on domestic stuff instead of bringing in money," but the implication is there, threading through every terse exchange. That's the key, to dig beneath the surface-level politeness and find the deeper currents of conflict that your characters might not be expressing directly. Ask yourself, what is this character really saying, even if they're not saying it outright? And then find ways to express that truth indirectly, whether it's through loaded phrases, pointed silences, or shifts in body language. But, of course, hinting at conflicts is only the beginning. To really make your dialogue crackle with tension, you need to find ways to escalate those underlying disagreements into full-blown verbal sparring matches. And one of my favorite techniques for that is to play with interruptions and power dynamics. Think about it. In any conversation, there's a constant push and pull for dominance and control. Who gets to speak the most? Who sets the emotional tone? Who has the power to cut the other person off or demand their attention? Those patterns of interruption and verbal one-upmanship can be a goldmine for revealing character dynamics and ratcheting up conflict. For example, let's say you have a scene with a rebellious teenager and their overbearing parent. The parent is lecturing the teen about their grades or their curfew or whatever the issue of the day is, and the teen just keeps rolling their eyes and butting in with sarcastic comments. Every time the parent tries to make a point, the teen cuts them off with an exaggerated sigh or a, yeah, I know. It's a classic power struggle, the teen trying to assert their independence and individuality, the parent trying to reassert their authority as the one in charge. But then, maybe the parent reaches a breaking point and snaps, "I'm speaking now, and you will listen to me." Suddenly the dynamic shifts. The parent has verbally dominated the teen into submission, and the tension ratchets up about 10 notches. As writers, we can use those shifts in verbal power to show conflicts escalating in real time. Pay attention to who's interrupting whom, whose voice carries more weight, who gets the last word in every exchange. Those patterns will reveal so much about the underlying tensions and power imbalances between your characters. But what takes a conflict from interesting to truly juicy is when you start layering in secrets, lies, and hidden agendas. Dialogue is the perfect place to have characters drop bombshells that completely recontextualize their relationships and goals. Maybe in the middle of that argument between the teen and the parent, the teen suddenly blurts out, "You're one to talk. I know you've been cheating on mom with your secretary." Plot twist. Suddenly, this isn't just a run-of-the-mill argument anymore. It's a defining moment that will force both characters to reassess everything they thought they knew. Or maybe you've got a love triangle where the two rivals have been sniping at each other for chapters. But then, in one heated confrontation, one of them slips up and reveals that they never actually cared about the person they're fighting over. They were just in it to get under the other rival's skin all along. Those kind of revelations up the emotional stakes and complicate the central conflict in fascinating ways. They force characters to question their assumptions, confront their own flaws and hypocrisies, and maybe even find common ground with people they thought were their sworn enemies. So, when you're writing conflict, heavy dialogue, always be on the lookout for opportunities to have characters spill some secrets or expose hidden facets of their personalities and motivations. Let them be a little messy, a little unpredictable. The most interesting conflicts are always the ones with the most layers. But, of course, as juicy as these secrets and revelations can be in the moment, the real key is to make sure they tie into your character's larger arcs and journeys. The best conflict-driven dialogue doesn't just create temporary drama. It's deeply rooted in who your characters are, what they want, and what's standing in their way. For example, let's go back to that cheating parent reveal from earlier. Yes, it's a shocking bombshell in the moment. But what really makes it powerful is if it connects to the character's core wounds and desires. Maybe the parent has been feeling neglected and unappreciated for years, and the affair was a misguided attempt to reclaim some sense of desirability and excitement. Maybe the teen's trust issues and fear of abandonment are rooted in a long history of their parents' marital problems. Or take that love triangle example. The rival's admission that they were only ever in it for the manipulation. That stings in the moment, sure. But what gives it real emotional weight is if it ties into some deep-seated insecurity or fear for the protagonist. Maybe they've always struggled with feeling worthy of love, and this revelation plays right into their worst fears about being fundamentally unlovable. When you ground your conflict-driven dialogue in your character's most intimate emotional stakes, it stops being just surface-level drama and starts being an integral part of their growth and transformation. Every barbed exchange, every heated confrontation becomes a mini arc in itself, a crucible that challenges your character's beliefs, relationships, and sense of self. So, when you're crafting those tense, conflict-heavy conversations, don't just think about what will create the most fireworks in the moment. Think about how each revelation and power shift connects to your character's deepest yearnings and struggles. Use dialogue as a catalyst to push them out of their comfort zones, to force them to confront harsh truths and make impossible choices. That's how you elevate conflict-driven dialogue from mere entertainment to something truly resonant and unforgettable. When every word exchanged is not just a momentary thrill, but a vital piece of your character's emotional journeys. Of course, all of this is easier said than done. Writing dialogue that crackles with authentic, layered conflict takes practice, nuance, and a whole lot of psychological savvy. You have to be willing to really dig into your characters' psyches, to understand what makes them tick and what buttons to press to get under their skin. But the payoff is so worth it. When you can write a conversation that leaves readers breathless with anticipation, that has them frantically turning pages to find out what happens next, That's when you know you've leveled up as a storyteller. So, my challenge to you today is to take a look at your current work in progress and identify a scene that's ripe for some juicy, conflict-driven dialogue. Maybe it's a long, simmering confrontation that's been building for chapters, or maybe it's a seemingly innocuous exchange that you can infuse with subtext and tension. Whatever it is, take some time to really think about what each character wants in that scene, what they're afraid of, what secrets or resentments they might be hiding. Then, start playing around with power dynamics, interruptions, and revealing slips of the tongue. See how far you can push the tension and emotional stakes while still keeping things grounded in your characters' voices and experiences.